Everyone has a game that they wish they could play for the first time all over again. That one gaming experience that they could never quite top, that managed to shock or surprise them or give them a sense of wonder and discovery that nothing else could ever quite match. For me, that game is probably Breath of the Wild. When I first played it, I had no idea what I was getting into, and what I found absolutely blew my mind. Flinging myself around using stasis, finally getting to explore an actual open world Hyrule, the big fights against the divine beasts, encountering my first guardian, the bit where you finally get the Master Sword back, these are all moments of discovery and surprise that I will never ever forget. And when you think about it, it's a good thing too, because no matter how much I might want to experience the joy that my first playthrough of Breath of the Wild brought me, there is absolutely nothing I can do, ever, to experience that feeling again. You can't discover something twice, or conveniently forget all the cool secrets you figured out, and so, as fun as that stuff might have been, the very experiences that I most associate with Breath of the Wild are locked off and inaccessible forever. And of course, Breath of the Wild isn't alone here. There are loads of titles that I sometimes wish I could wipe my memory of and experience with a blank slate all over again, but unfortunately, I will never be able to. The shock ending to the case in Disco Elysium, well, I've already seen it before, so it's not anywhere near as impactful. Finally, after hundreds of deaths scaling the heights of Celeste Mountain, I've done it a few times now, and I'll be honest, it's not actually that hard. The gut-wrenching tension and sky-high stakes of Mass Effect 2's Suicide Mission, where every character's life is on the line? Now that I know how it all works, it's difficult to get too broken up about the idea of this random lady getting turned into space goo anymore. In all these cases, the games themselves haven't changed, and we can still make all the same decisions that we did in our first time through, but regardless of how much we might want to replicate our original experience, we will never be able to play these games in quite the same way as we used to. I guess what I'm saying, and what really interests me about this topic, is that while we might start our time with a given title, looking at its surface level from an ignorant vantage point, the more we play and interact with it, the more layers of nuance and depth we peel away, and the more informed our own perspective becomes. The problem is, though, is that while this process of revealing a game's innermost layers and growing in mastery is loads of fun, you can never put the layers you remove from a game back. Every new thing we learn in a game, every new challenge we succeed in, and every step of forward progress we make, we permanently lose access to experiences and ways of playing that were only accessible from that more ignorant perspective. If it helps to visualize it, think about this like chiseling a sculpture out of rock, or cracking open an egg, or doing an autopsy, take your pick. The more layers you break off or cut into, the more new ways of examining the thing you reveal. But also, you're unlikely to be able to put it back together again to view its unspoiled form, and you're also probably going to make a bit of a mess in the process. So basically, what I'm saying is that not only is our time with games always going to be finite, but the way we perceive a game is always going to be changing too. The moment we first start playing a game, hell, the moment we first hear about a game, we are set on a journey that begins at a point of total ignorance and ends, hopefully, at a point of total knowledge and mastery. To my mind, this nostalgic feeling like you want to go back to a blank slate perspective and back to viewing a game from its surface layer all over again, usually in full knowledge of the fact that it's impossible, is a mark that this process has in some way failed. If you get stuck unable to reveal the deeper layers of a game's nuances, or even run out of layers to explore before you've reached that satisfying point of complete understanding, I think it's very natural to want to return to a place and a perspective where everything was new and exciting, rather than boring and routine or confusing and frustrating. However, we know that going back in time to wipe our memories of a game is more or less impossible without some risky surgery that I'm not allowed to advertise anymore. And so designers and players alike have to figure out ways to avoid us getting into these sorts of ruts and continuing to explore a game's layers of complexity. In essence, the challenge that both sides of the coin face is ensuring that we're able to have a full, complete, and satisfying journey through a game's various layers without getting stuck and before they run out. In a sense, spending our limited ignorance in the most efficient way possible. So, how do developers and players alike manage to deal with this? How can games structure their layers of understanding and perspective in such a way that not only can we fully explore their potential, but when we are eventually done, we feel as if we fully understood them? Well, there's a variety of techniques, but I think the absolute fundamentals lie in ensuring that each individual layer of a game's depth, each new perspective and point of view we come to see a game from, feels meaningful and contributes positively to the overall experience. And this can be achieved by structuring games in particular ways, by incentivizing players to find new layers of meaning within a game themselves, and occasionally, avoiding unhelpful layers of a game not worth wasting time and effort on through the use of what I'm going to call tactical spoilers. Yes, I am going to be partially defending spoilers. Just trust me on this one, okay? Before we get onto that though, let's start with one of the more obvious ways that video games can make the most of the fact that your frame of reference is constantly evolving, and that's by tying our journey through a game's various layers of depth and mastery to their overall progression structure. Nothing makes you crave the sweet embrace of ignorance more than feeling like you've been rushed through a game's layers of depth too fast, the magic is gone, and now you're stuck with a level of understanding that doesn't match your level of progress. Look at a lot of open-worldy titles. You'll spend a great first few hours uncovering all the things to do and understanding how they fit into a cohesive environment, but once you've burned through all those layers of discovery, you'll still have, like, 90% of the game still to go and no new depth to explore, leading to some bland gameplay and you resenting the devs for not maintaining that feeling of wide-eyed wonder. Basically, it sucks because your level of expertise and your level of progress are out of sync, leaving you craving more stuff to discover but with nowhere to actually get it. However, in a game where your progress is instead dependent on understanding its nuances, and vice versa, not only can games pace out their various reveals between sections of more standard gameplay, but each individual discovery will also feel way better because it will have a tangible result in the game world and will reveal new ideas for you to explore. Outer Wilds is an archetypal discovery-based progression game. Each layer of knowledge, like figuring out how to navigate Dark Bramble or access the Know My City, serves as a barrier to progress, and the only way to get past them is to grow your knowledge of the game and to see it from a new point of view, with your reward being getting one step closer towards the ending, as well as a bunch of fun new mysteries to solve, all of which also serve as knowledge-based progression gates, thereby ensuring that your level of understanding can never outpace your progress. I think the best example of this kind of structural conceit in action, however, lies in a little game called Void Stranger, which is all about layers on both a physical and design level that initially appears to be a regular block-pushing puzzler and ends as anything but. Oh, and don't worry, I won't talk about any story spoilers or anything I discovered past maybe the first 2 or 3 hours, because I would really like for you to experience the game for yourself and consider this a preview of just how cool it gets, okay? Right, so on initial impressions, Void Stranger appears to be a standard soccer band game, but with the fun gimmick that you can pick up tiles to move bits of the level around. Cool enough. And there's definitely some fun moments of discovery as you learn to think about levels in terms of their possible configurations instead of their starting shape, with this change in perspective allowing you to grab some optional locust idols from treasure chests. But locust idols aren't just treasure, they're also a currency, and they can be spent with these merchants to learn that there are certain spots in the void that don't lead to instant death, but secret hidden shortcuts and sublevels between floors. Some shortcuts are hidden, some let you pay a toll in locust idols to skip that many floors ahead, and some shortcuts are so well hidden that they only open if you arrange entire levels into particular shapes, causing the realization that all those floors that seem to have no puzzles on at all actually contained another kind of even more hidden puzzle that you don't even know how to solve yet, and that I won't spoil the method behind. But that's not all. Sometimes when you go down those secret level spanning shortcuts, you might be able to grab cool items like this magic cube that lets you talk to rocks. Yes, all the rocks you've been pushing around as part of puzzles, they all have, as far as I'm aware, unique dialogue that contains even more secrets and even more hidden lore knowledge that reframes everything you've experienced so far all over again. And that might get you thinking, if all the rocks have something to say, what about the rocks on the floors before you got the cube? Is there a way to travel up layers of the void instead of down to see what they've got to talk about? To put it lightly, yes there is, but I will let you discover that for yourself, because let me tell you, it is a doozy. A reminder that I discovered all of this in maybe my first 3 or so hours, and Void Stranger is about 60 hours long. It gets crazy. This is the real value of discovery as a progression milestone. You get to constantly reinterpret the game and appreciate it from that great innocent feeling perspective over and over as your mind gets blown again and again. However, it is important for these kinds of games to make each individual layer provide a satisfying shift in perspective that add up to create a feeling of growth and mastery greater than the sum of their parts. Return of the Obra Dinn and Chants of Sennar are great discovery-based games because the more you learn about Obra Dinn's narrative twists and Chants of Sennar's various languages, the more your relationship with their worlds evolves and deepens. Each layer of discovery, like where the hell this kraken came from, or the shared mythological signifiers of every culture in Sennar, gives new context and presents new questions to everything else you thought you knew about the rest of the game. Contrast that with something like, I don't know, Dave the Diver, which also purports to have lots of different layers and to gradually enrich your relationship with them into something, deeper, but unfortunately, even though it introduces a seemingly endless variety of new systems and ideas, from crafting to farming to this, apparently, none of them meaningfully intersect or overlap in the same way that, say, Tunic's evolving mechanics and secrets all ultimately serve to shift your perception of its central instruction manual's mysteries. And each of the individual mechanics in Dave the Diver never unveil much in the way of additional layers of complexity themselves, leading to a game that hits the superficial feeling of discovering a new way to view the same game, but without the more nourishing sense that all of these ideas are somehow building on each other, and ultimately ending up with me chasing the feeling of learning there was a whole fish breeding minigame hidden inside Dave the Diver before I realised that it was all just really, shallow. This leads me onto another problem that can lead us to feeling drawn back to a simpler point when we knew less about a game, and that's a sense of incompleteness. Rather than burning through the layers of a game too quickly, and rushing us ahead to an unsatisfying point of mastery that doesn't feel earned, some games are entirely unable to spend our lack of knowledge at all, leaving us locked in these weird, unsatisfying frames of reference where we feel like we ought to be getting more out of a game, but it simply isn't able to give us the goods, meaning that we get stuck with no incentive to seek out a game's deeper levels of understanding. I ran into this recently as some friends and I got into Counter-Strike. Normally, each map in the game is this little mastery journey all of its own. Each one has a bunch of layers and strategy and nuance to it that are really fun to figure out. Slowly developing tactics that do stuff like take this tough choke point on Anubis, then develop counter strategies to stop the enemy from doing the same thing, or getting our heads around the strategic nuances of key areas like this one called Banana on Inferno, were very rewarding layers to pick apart. However, this wasn't true for every map. For a time, my group just couldn't understand why the map CS Office was so hated by the wider community, because we really enjoyed running around its unique environment and finding fun ways to ambush people in its many corridors. But a couple of games in, we suddenly realised that if the terrorist team never left their spawn, they forced the counter-terrorists into two horrible firing corridors that are almost impossible to push through, leading to the terrorists winning almost every round in exactly the same way. Suddenly, our strategic progress came to a dead stop, because while there were additional layers of nuance still to uncover in the level design, they all paled in comparison to the simple yet overwhelmingly effective strategy of standing behind some filing cabinets, meaning that we quickly stopped exploring new layers of the map, and Office lost its charm just as fast. Without sufficient reason to explore deeper into a game's layers, players often simply won't do it, and so we need some sort of incentive to change our point of view and appreciate a game from new angles. Two really solid recent examples of this can be seen in Pikmin 4 and Baldur's Gate 3, both games that are, for the most part, pretty damn easy, but that both contain layers of strategic nuance that may potentially go unused, such as managing small groups of Pikmin under time pressure, or solving problems using emergent systemic mechanics, because you can always just bum rush stuff with a maxed out army of Pikmin, or just bum rush stuff with Karlach, who, when you think about it, is basically a red Pikmin anyway. However, in Pikmin 4's Dandori challenges, and Baldur's Gate 3's Honor Mode, both of which crank the difficulty way up and nerf overpowered strategies like mass Pikmin rushing and stuff like Tavern Brawler, players are forced to explore alternative approaches and think about their tactics on a more sophisticated level as they search for solutions to these tough problems. A rewarding experience that many players really want but would simply have no incentive to really pursue without these extra modes. It's worth noting though that incentives to keep peeling apart a game and discovering its various layers needn't start and end in the space of a single playthrough. For many titles, the arc of your journey from ignorance to completion can span multiple different start-to-finish runs of a game from multiple different perspectives, as you explore the game's mechanics and potential from different angles. Fan-made challenge runs like speedrunning or Iron Man playthroughs allow players to look at games they thought they already mastered through a brand new lens, often revealing extra levels of gameplay texture that they never otherwise would have considered. Equally, competitive games have the incentive of other players, who are also uncovering layers of the game for themselves, to encourage always looking that one level deeper into the metagame in order to gain the upper hand. Many games are even built with replayability in mind. Stuff like New Game Plus modes are layers of games that you can only fully appreciate with the perspective of having completed them once already. In this process though, games do need to be wary of accidentally forcing players into getting stuck on a layer of understanding and a perspective that isn't actually very fun. Grinding is often symptomatic of this. It takes a certain degree of mastery to work out the most efficient way to play a game, and while this revelation itself might be satisfying, viewing a game exclusively through the lens of emotionless practicality often isn't a particularly enjoyable experience and doesn't really encourage further exploration. Similarly, games that scale their difficulty by simply multiplying enemy health and damage values, far from encouraging players to think creatively about systems and come up with interesting strategies to deal with these new challenges, often end up invalidating more sophisticated layers of understanding and forcing players back into just cowardly hiding or simple DPS optimization, making your view of the game less interesting as the game gets harder, not more. This, as I foreshadowed earlier, is where tactical spoilers come in. See, some of you might have already pointed out in the comments, and in so doing ruining this reveal, well done, I hope you're proud of yourselves, that this idea of games having layers and us viewing them differently based on accumulated knowledge has a lot in common with the concept of a spoiler. And this is no coincidence. In just the same way that learning a story's twist ending or seeing a cool moment in advance will irrevocably alter your perception of the piece, so too does being told a game's secrets or copying a winning strategy forever change the way you look at it. In a sense, a spoiler gives you all the information from a given layer of a game that you may have had fun unpacking for yourself, and that's why people rightfully go out of their way to avoid being spoiled. Basically, spoilers skip you over a bit of your journey to understanding, taking any potential enjoyment with them. However, sometimes spoilers can be made to work in our favour, because while the process of unpacking a game's layers and viewing the same work of art from a series of different directions can be fun, not all layers of a game, or the effort required to understand them, are actually worthwhile. And spoilers allow us to either bypass those layers of meaning that will have a deleterious effect on your overall experience, or arm you with the information you need to approach particular layers of meaning from the right point of view. If you don't believe me, then what do you think a tutorial is? Sure, some people might love the idea of trying to figure out a game completely from first principles, but most of the time, this process would just be frustrating and wouldn't really add much to your overall journey. And so, a tutorial serves as, essentially, a spoiler that eases you through a game's first few layers of understanding and arms you with the tools that you need to handle the rest. While spoilers do of course have the potential to ruin stuff by robbing us of the chance to explore layers of a game ourselves, their utility when it comes to helping us prepare for or avoid rough patches cannot be overstated. For example, content warnings, letting players know that they're about to reach a point of no return, and helpful UI elements like completion percentages are all basically spoilers, and they're also more or less unambiguously helpful. But tactical spoilers can have even more wide-reaching uses as well. Mechanisms in games that let us know when particular decisions are going to have ramifications later on, like the classic Telltale X will remember that, far from removing ambiguity, give us a window into the mechanisms of the plot and get us thinking about how that choice will pan out later. Equally, the Metroidvania ability, where you're shown advanced gameplay systems at the start before getting them taken away, does remove some of the surprise of unlocking new mechanics, but it also serves as a great motivator to keep playing and get back innate weapons, which can be really satisfying. Tactical spoilers needn't come directly from games themselves either. In many cases, it falls to well-intentioned fans to help each other out by carefully spoiling each other in order to ensure that newbies have the best possible experience. Consider Dark Souls 1, for example. The evergreen advice given to all new players is to not fight the skeletons in the Firelink Shrine, because they're both way too hard for a new player and also in the wrong direction to the intended path. Now, this goes directly against the game's intended design of leaving players to uncover these harsh lessons and layers of gameplay themselves, but most experienced players know that spoiling people on this element will lead to them having more fun in the long run because they won't quit out of frustration and will actually reach Dark Souls' more nuanced and very satisfying layers of discovery. And when starting to play the Yakuza games, the advice I got to treat the sub-stories as an occasional break from the main quest whenever I happen to run into them, rather than something I should grind my way through at my earliest opportunity, saved me from getting stuck viewing the game as being full of chores to tick off like in most open world games, and instead let me see the sub-stories as these fun little episodic adventures that I can use as a palate cleanser when I'm not, doing this. On a similar note, it's entirely possible to go into, say, Myhouse.wad, a great mod for the original Doom games, completely oblivious to the fact that it's based on House of Leaves, a book all about metatextuality and recursive storytelling. However, that would probably mean that you'd miss all the coolest stuff and wouldn't even realise that shooting demons isn't the focus, because you'd have no way of knowing that, much like in its inspiration, the fun of Myhouse.wad comes from exploring the weird house to find all sorts of mind-bending secrets. In this case, spoiling yourself in advance isn't just helpful, it's basically mandatory if you want to enjoy the experience. And this is the thing, right? Our perspective on games isn't just shaped by what layers of their narratives, strategies, and worlds we've uncovered, but the stuff we've seen and the way we've seen it in other titles as well. The way we perceive the various layers of games is informed by the collective knowledge and experiences that we've had up until that point, good or bad. Video games aren't something that are purchased, consumed once, and then thrown away forever. Or, at the very least, they shouldn't be. Don't get me wrong, I do get it. The idea of experiencing every game from a completely blank perspective with no corruptive outside influence or spoilers seems appealing, but not only is it functionally impossible, I think it's also quite a limited way of viewing the medium. Without my prior experience of spectacle fighting games, I wouldn't be able to appreciate the nuances of Hi-Fi Rush's design and the way it cleverly evolves Devil May Cry's already pretty rhythmic combat. Without an existing familiarity of military shooters, Spec Ops: The Line's commentary would have gone completely over my head, plus I wouldn't be able to get appropriately angry about it being delisted everywhere. And had I not been quote-unquote spoiled in advance about Void Stranger having cool stuff going on under the surface, then I never would have even tried to play it because I hate soccer band games. Obviously that's not to say that all spoilers are good or that we shouldn't be sensitive about them, it's just that a reflexive fear of cultural contamination can often do just as much damage as getting spoiled itself. And so, viewed from a wider, better informed perspective, this whole problem of us wishing we could re-experience stuff in games that we've already seen seems a bit silly, right? Why waste your time and effort trying to recapture an experience that's already an inescapable part of you and can serve as a gateway to a whole new echelon of experiences contained within deeper layers of games? The very fact that I cherish my memories of Breath of the Wild, Disco Elysium, Celeste, and Mass Effect 2 is what allows me to replay those games from a new point of view and using my prior experiences to inform my new perspective. I can appreciate the expert foreshadowing of story twists, push my level of mechanical mastery beyond what I thought its limits were, and seek out the best possible ending to the story now that I know how to control it. Hell, I even gave speedrunning Breath of the Wild a go. It went terribly and I was horrible at it, but it was still a valuable point of view that I was only able to have because I've played the game before. The key to beating that feeling that our good times with a game are a burden isn't going back to the start or mindlessly continuing to play in the same way in the hopes that a 100% completion percentage will fulfill us, it's to look at them a layer deeper, from a new perspective, and find a new way to play them. And if that fails, to take those experiences and allow them to enrich a totally different game instead. I guess what I'm saying is that while games can be designed around keeping us in that great zone of exploration, discovery, and mastery for as long as possible, eventually the onus falls to us players. There's absolutely nothing wrong with fondly remembering some favourite moments from your gaming history, but if we allow that attachment to cause us to stagnate in our own nostalgia, or to futilely try and experience the same thing from the same perspective twice, then we're not really putting those memories to good use. By instead working with the natural flow of mastery, rather than against it, we can use our existing experiences as stepping stones and unlock layers of games so interesting that we'll forget about wanting to go backwards at all. Now, if you don't mind, because I'm better than all of you and don't have to follow my own advice, I'm gonna spend 2 or 3 hours running around in the garden outside of Peach's castle in Mario 64 because I got scared of Bowser's voice telling me not to come inside, because I don't know about you, but I am really desperate to sort of emotionally time travel back to a point before I had to pay taxes, so wish me luck! Hello, what's up? It's me back in the new year after a little holiday. Phew, it's been a while, hasn't it? Wow. Well, in case you weren't aware, what you're listening to right now is what I like to call the After the Video segment, and it's by far the most important part of this entire thing. See, the After the Video segment is where I like to shout out some cool people that you should be paying attention to instead of me, and talk just a little bit about why they're so cool. This time, I'd like to point you in the direction of excellent YouTuber Thor High Heels, who has a fantastic channel that focuses on exploring the merits and the mysteries behind the countercultural and forgotten side of video games. If you want to watch an hour-long video all about the black sheep of a beloved franchise that no one else likes, then Thor almost certainly has you covered, and matches some excellent insight with great jokes and a truly, truly wonderful MS Paint art that is as high effort as it is visually upsetting. Thor has even done work outside of YouTube making soundtracks for games like the brilliant Umurangi Generation, so if you like the music in that game, then go support Thor and pick it up now, or just the game in general, to be honest, because it's great. Anyway, Thor is fantastic, please go do a subscribble, and also check out Thor's video on YouTube thumbnails, because it is some of their best work yet. But Thor High Heels isn't alone when it comes to shoutouts. No siree, because my patrons are also just as cool and just as talented, and have you all done something with your hair lately? I mean, maybe have you had a makeover or something? Either way, you're all looking fabulous. My patrons are the only people in the world that I feel comfortable complimenting because each and every one of them have firmly established themselves as fundamentally good people by allowing this channel to continue operating. Seriously, without the generous support of my patrons, I would be forced to take money from the War Thunder people or the Raid Shadow Legends people, and I really don't want to do that because they have, at this point, started sending me threatening notes written in blood through my door, so all of their support, and hopefully all of your future support, is very much appreciated. Of course, patrons do get some stuff in return. They get early access to videos, they get behind the scenes stuff, they get extra game design goodness written by me that no one else gets to see, and they even get a special shoutout if they give me at least $5 a month. For those who give me $10 a month though, well, those people get something even better, and that is a voice shoutout like these fine people here. Who are? Ali Wright, Andrew Lebrano, Asaran, Auna94, Brennan Spalding, Brian Natariani, Buy More Skyrim for Todd, Constantine Amend, Cool Jam, Cosmix360, Daniel Medjes, Das Kangaroo, David Setzer, Dirk Jan Karambeld, Digletier, Ekton, Edward Franklin Woods, Eugene Bulkin, Gaskell, Iofer93, Jacob Dylan Riddle, Jinkaloid, Jordan Gear, Kevin Help Us, Luke Kokoran, Mace154, Marika Vladilina Altair, Mark Vallant, Meme Dragon, Mika Oy, Nate Graff, NWDD, Oliver Marhofer, Patrick Romberg, Peter Tomasic, Reddidex, Regal Regex, Revelation, Ray's Dad, Silver Fulfi, deceptively hard to say that one, Steam Rollerman, Steve Riley, Tom Marston, Ty Gurin, Tyler Duncan, Uprising, Whimsical Wisp, Zach Brandmeier, and Chow. Okay, that's me done. Sorry this one took so long, and bye!